In this video, I'm going to be exposing the tactics of spiritual abuse. Make sure to stick around until the end to learn about these 10 tactics and the red flags to look out for in your spiritual or religious relationships and communities so you can better detect and prevent spiritual abuse. First of all, what is spiritual abuse? Spiritual abuse is a form of manipulation and control that occurs when an individual or a group uses spiritual or religious beliefs or teachings to exploit or harm others. It can take on many different forms, such as using fear tactics, manipulation, control, or guilt to control and exploit other people. And it can happen to anyone in any spiritual or religious setting. Hi, my name is Callie Sorensen, and I am a survivor of a spiritual cult. I now support others in recovering from spiritual abuse. These spiritual manipulative tactics can be done in very subtle, covert, and sophisticated ways, making it really difficult to recognize. As a survivor, I know firsthand how destructive it is and how important it is to be aware of these tactics and how to recognize them and trust yourself when something feels off. This is part 1 of a series, so make sure that you like and subscribe to get notified of upcoming videos and other red flags to look out for. And also, make sure to download my Cult Recovery Guide. It's a free 50-page guide full of education, a red flag checklist, and journal prompts to help you on your journey. So before we dive in, I want to just mention that with all tactics and all red flags, it's important to consider the context and intention behind the behavior. Influence can exist on a spectrum from healthy to destructive, and it's not always a clear-cut black or white situation. But remember that if something feels off, it's important to trust your instincts and seek support. So now let's dive into the 10 spiritual abuse tactics. Tactic number 1, using the promise of spiritual rewards to control behavior. This tactic involves using the promise of spiritual enlightenment or the attainment of heaven as a means to manipulating individuals into behaving a certain way. Examples of this tactic is when they claim that if a person acts or behaves in a certain way, they will achieve spiritual enlightenment or a higher level of consciousness, that they'll receive blessings for themselves or their family, that they will be protected from evil entities or negative energy, or be promised a healing or a deliverance from physical or emotional problems or pain, or the promise of receiving spiritual gifts or abilities. This tactic is particularly effective because it preys on people's deepest desires and their deepest fears. People can be experiencing a lot of pain or suffering in their life, and they will do anything to achieve peace, enlightenment, or a higher state of consciousness, or to get that coveted golden ticket to heaven. Tactic number 2, using fear tactics, such as warnings of eternal damnation or invoking evil entities. The use of fear tactics can help to control and manipulate people. This tactic involves using the threat of negative entity attacks, evil spirits, Satan, the end of the world, natural disasters, eternal damnation, you name it. Any kind of frightening concept to instill fear in people and control their behavior. And these people might claim that certain actions or behaviors will lead to a lower consciousness or spiritual damnation, while other actions will guarantee salvation or spiritual enlightenment. This tactic is particularly effective because it preys on people's fears and insecurities. Many people have deep-seated fears that they might not be even aware of about death or evil entities, being harmed, the afterlife, and more. An abuser can use these fears to control and manipulate them. This can lead to a state of constant fear, anxiety, uncertainty, feeling like you're always walking on eggshells, which can be detrimental to somebody's health. It can also leave a person more susceptible to control, abuse, and create dependency on that group or leader. Tactic number 3, using toxic positivity to control and manipulate others. This tactic involves using spiritual concepts such as purifying oneself, raising one's vibration, or being a good spiritual person in order to control an individual's behaviors and emotions. An abuser may use phrases such as be a good Christian, purify yourself, transcend that ego, in order to control somebody's behavior and make them feel guilty or ashamed for not living up to these high standards. They may also use the concept of raising one's vibration to control an individual's emotions, suggesting that negative emotions such as anger or sadness or frustrations are low vibration and must be suppressed in order to achieve spiritual enlightenment. This tactic is particularly insidious because it manipulates individuals into suppressing their authentic emotions, experiences, and their voice. It can lead to people feeling guilty or ashamed for experiencing any kind of human negative emotion, and it can make them feel as if they're not spiritual enough or good enough, and that they need to continue learning from this toxic spiritual leader or community to try and achieve this unachievable, unrealistic state. Tactic number 4, using spiritual practices such as coerced confessions as a means of gaining power over others. This tactic involves using spiritual practices such as prayer or confessions as a means of manipulating individuals into revealing personal information, their weaknesses, or secrets that can then be used to control or exploit them. A spiritual abuser may use confessions as a tool to extract information out from that person and then use that information to manipulate them. In my community, they had what was called distortion readings, where the leader or other members would publicly list out your distortions, basically any human weaknesses or faults that you had, as a way to publicly humiliate and shame you. Yet they claim this was for your own benefit. These types of readings, confessions, or interpretations of spiritual texts aimed at cutting down individuals and making them feel guilty or ashamed, while claiming that this is for their own spiritual growth or evolution. It preys on individuals' vulnerabilities and trust in these spiritual leaders. They may think that the leader can see through them or know what's best for them, or honestly thinks that the group is there to support them. Tactic number 5, using spiritual teachings to justify abusive behavior or to silence victims. This tactic involves an abuser using spiritual quotes, scripture, or religious doctrine to justify their own abusive behavior or to silence people. They may use words such as karma, fate, destiny, the universe's plan. My leader told me that he was playing the dark horse to be of service to me in order to mirror lessons that I needed to learn from him. Another example is when an abuser uses a spiritual text that promote you surrendering to them, to be submissive or obedient to authority in order to justify their control over the victims. They also might be using the concept of karma to justify abuse, claiming that the victims are receiving just punishments for past misdeeds. They may also use the concept of free will to justify their abusive behaviors, stating that the victims have the free will to leave and the abuses of their own choice. This just actually shows their complete lack of understanding of how coercive control works, and it's not just that easy as free will or just leave. Make sure to check out my other video about coercive control. Tactic number 6 is using the authority of religion or a higher power to control and manipulate individuals. This tactic involves an abuser claiming that God or a higher power has told them or others to do or say something, and then using this as a justification for their actions or statements. An abuser may use phrases such as, God really wants us to do this. The Holy Spirit told me I got to download from my guides that you shouldn't do this, in order to control and manipulate other people. They may also use phrases such as, the Lord wants me to. God told me that you needed to do this. I got to download from the universe about you. To assert their authority and to manipulate people into following to do what they want you to do. This tactic is particularly harmful because it manipulates people into believing that their actions or statements are divinely inspired, and it can make it difficult for them to question that person or resist a spiritual authority. I mean, how can you prove what God did or didn't say to them? It's also harmful because it implies that God or a higher power is supporting or condoning the abusive behavior. Tactic number 7, using spiritual or religious practices to induce a state of vulnerability and then exploiting that person's vulnerability. This tactic is a form of abuse that preys on people's vulnerability and trust. It involves using spiritual or religious rituals or practices such as meditation, breath work, chanting, singing, praying to alter somebody's state of consciousness or get them into a peak state, which induces this sense of vulnerability. And then once that person is in this open or peak state, the abuser will exploit them by asking for donations or offer their time to be of service, or instilling new beliefs and teachings and this indoctrination and new ways of thinking, or encouraging them to sign up for something or getting them to do or say things that normally they would not do if they were not in that state. This tactic is particularly insidious because it manipulates people's deepest beliefs and desires. Many people turn to spirituality as a source of comfort and guidance, and they may be more likely to trust somebody who claims that they have this spiritual authority. Tactic number 8, using the expectation of service to control and manipulate people. Now, this could involve them claiming that serving the mission or the group or the leader or the church is a special duty and a privilege, or that you were specially chosen to lead or guide others, and using this as a means of manipulation or control. They could convince you to work for free, all in the name of volunteering or service to something bigger than yourself, when in reality, you are free labor to serve the leader and their own personal agenda. And if you don't serve, you could be deemed as selfish, having a lack of spiritual maturity or a lack of commitment to a greater purpose. In my group, you would be deemed as a service to self being instead of a service to others being. This tactic is particularly harmful because it manipulates individuals into sacrificing their own well-being for the supposed spiritual good of others. It can also lead to burnout and resentment among volunteers who feel like they are being taken advantage of. And in some cases, it could even be considered human trafficking. Tactic number 9, using the concepts of fate, destiny, or soul contract to control and manipulate people. This tactic involves an abuser claiming that certain events or experiences, including abuse, are part of an individual's fate or destiny, and that it was chosen by a higher power or a soul contract. An abuser might use phrases such as, "This is your fate. God chose this for you. It's a part of your soul contract," to manipulate individuals into accepting and even defending that other person's behavior. For example, one of my clients was told that she chose her abuse as a soul before she came here. She was told that her abuser loved her so much that they had sacrificed themselves to incarnate here to harm her so that she could evolve and learn lessons. Yet this story was used as a tactic in order to control and get away with the abuse that happened. They may also use these concepts to silence people so they don't get caught, claiming that it's not their place to question or speak out against the abuser's actions. This tactic is particularly harmful because it manipulates people into accepting and even defending the abuser's behavior. And it can also lead to the victims feeling guilty, ashamed, powerless, or even blaming themselves. Tactic number 10. Using victim blaming to control and manipulate people. This tactic involves an abuser telling someone to stop being a victim and implying that they are responsible for their own suffering, rather than acknowledging the role of the abuser's actions in causing that harm. An abuser may use phrases such as, "Don't be a victim, stop playing that victim role," to manipulate people into accepting and internalizing the blame for their own suffering. They may also use spiritual or religious language to make it seem as if the individual's suffering is a test of faith or a reflection of their own ego or shortcomings. It manipulates people into accepting and internalizing blame for their own suffering, rather than holding the abuser accountable for their actions. It can also lead individuals to feeling guilty, ashamed, or alone in their suffering. Remember, it is not the victim's fault, and it's important to speak out against abuse and seek help and support. So, these are just 10 of the spiritual manipulative tactics. Please make sure to check out part 2 for more red flags and tactics to look out for. And if you need support recovering from spiritual abuse, I offer one-on-one sessions. And remember, spiritual abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of their level of faith. If you suspect that you or someone you know is a victim of spiritual abuse, trust your instincts and seek out that help and support. And to help you on your journey, I've created the Cult Recovery Guide and help you recover from the effects of spiritual abuse. So thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos on spiritual abuse and recovery and many other related topics. Remember, you are not alone and you deserve to be treated with respect.